Alright everybody, welcome back to another Dead by Daylight video. So, today we're going to talk about the obvious thing to talk about, and that is the new chapter. We're not going to talk about the whole chapter in this episode, or this video. We're just going to talk about the killer mostly, because I think that was the thing I got the most to say about, honestly. I'm probably going to do a video about the map and the survivor in one go. That'll probably be out tomorrow. But so the Unknown, the new killer, who is based on analog horror. First off, I do want to say the design, the visual design, and a lot of people are not the biggest fan of it. I think it's amazing. I think it's good. I think it uses body horror well. I appreciate that in the lore there's some MK Ultra stuff going on, which is kind of cool. And the fact that it's never explicitly said exactly what is going on is just good. It's just so good, and I really hope when the tome comes out we don't learn more about this killer. On top of that, side note, I've wanted Fiddlesticks from League of Legends in this game for a long time, and honestly, this killer is basically what I would want him to be. For real, like, he has the idols, he mimics voices, and yeah, it's just... I'm going to make a whole separate thing about that too. But yeah, so the new killer is really fun. I had a lot of fun with him. It doesn't mean he's perfect. There are a lot of pain points I'm going to get to with that. But overall, I did enjoy playing him. And I think there's some small tweaks they could do. I say small, to make him better. Before we get into that, let's go over what the power actually does. So, I'm going to paraphrase this very well, because I'm sure you've heard this a million times. Basically, the killer is a 115 killer. He's ranged, and has an M1. His main power is he can activate a little launcher in front of him, shoots it out, fires a grenade. The grenade can bounce, and it does an explosion radius. If the survivor is caught in the explosion radius, they are weakened. Once weakened, they can unweaken themselves by looking at the killer for a certain amount of time, similar to Ghostface. And if they are hit again with the grenade while weakened, they take an injure state. On top of that, periodically you will place remnants behind, similar to Dredge, where you can then teleport back to them later. And we will get into the problems with both of these and ways I think they can fix them. So the grenades, I love the grenades. The grenades they're just, the idea of a grenade that bounces and you can kind of bank it off of certain things to land a hit is so cool. They also go through walls. Not the grenade itself, but the explosion radius does. So if survivors are hugging certain loops, you can hit them through it, which is super cool. I love that. So let's get into some of the pain points with the grenades, though. And yes, I know they're not actually grenades. It's just easier to call them that. The biggest pain point to me was how inconsistent the bouncing was. Now, he does have an add-on called Milk Carton that makes the bouncing better. I tried testing it, and it really didn't seem like it did anything. It was just very inconsistent when, where, and how much it bounced. At first, I thought maybe it was a range thing. It didn't seem to be that. Then I thought maybe, well, the surface has to be flat. Didn't seem to be that. Thought maybe, well, it doesn't bounce off the ground. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't bounce off. There's very specific things it doesn't bounce off of, which is very strange. Because sometimes you'll land or be aiming a shot. You'll think, oh, I'll bounce it off this wall and hit the survivor at like an angle. And then it doesn't bounce at all. For some reason, it hits the wall directly and just explodes, which is very strange. So I hope that gets fixed in some way or shape or form. I think that's going to be the major skill ceiling with this killer, and I love it. I love the idea of a killer that's like banking shots and ricocheting stuff. This is what I wanted Trickster to be, in the sense of why I actually really enjoy his Trick Blade add-ons. On top of that, I do think, because it does hinder them, so it has a projectile and then the explosion. If the projectile hits the survivor, they are hindered for a slight amount of time. I do think it doesn't need to be increased, but I do think there needs to be something added to when it directly hits them. I think adding, maybe it refreshes the weakened status effect, maybe. So, because staring at you to get rid of the weakened status effect, while I think is cool and does have some cool gameplay on both sides, in the sense that the Unknown at a lot of loops is trying to stay hidden as much as they can, it's actually really fun to me, and I think it's different than other killers, because he's not inherently a stealth killer, so it adds to that. However, I do think on certain maps, especially open ones, it's going to basically make the power very useless until you actually get to those tiles. On top of that, this isn't a criticism, this is just me stating this. This power is not meant for long range. It is not meant for like a hatchet hit, okay? You're not shooting this shit from cross map to hit somebody. It does not go very far, even if you try to shoot it as far as it can go, so that needs to be noted. So on top of the grenades, I'm going to move on to the add-ons. We're not going to go over every single one, obviously, but I will say a lot of his add-ons are not very good. I tried most of them, not every single one. Obviously, there's only so much time in the day, but for the most part, the only add-ons I really saw any real use out of was the one that makes it so you move 50% faster after a teleport, and the one that makes it so you, when a survivor completes a generator, they are weakened immediately. I was combining this with Bitter Murmur a lot and getting a lot of value out of it. Otherwise, though, the other add-ons just seemed kind of meh. A lot of them are status effect ones, which is fine. He has 2 exhaustion ones for some reason, which is strange, but it is what it is. So we'll move on to the teleport. The teleport is probably one of the better teleports in the game. Now, there is some criticism in the fact that you don't directly get to decide where the idols go. This isn't completely true. You do have some control. However, I have a feeling they're not going to keep this in, and it's going to be exploited out somehow. And what I mean by that, so there's a little bar that fills up on the right side of the screen. You'll see it in some of the background gameplay here. When the bar fills up, you'll drop an idol. You can have 4 out at max, and when you can teleport to them basically anytime you want, and then there's a cooldown before you can do it again. This is cool, and the teleport is almost instant, and you instantly start moving the moment you teleport, which is also very cool. I got a lot of hits off of this, just randomly teleporting directly next to a survivor and just hitting them almost immediately. I think it's one of the better teleports in the game, and I think them making it random, quote-unquote, or not in full control of it, was their way of balancing it out. I do think it's really cool in that sense. Plus, it also gives the survivors a side objective to do, because they can get rid of your idols, which is fine. It takes them a little bit of time. It zooms in the camera, too, which I thought was a really nice touch. That means they can't just do it and look behind them or whatever, and just stop doing it the moment they hear or see you. It also plays a really loud sound, which is just cool. The sound design of this killer is also amazing. I love it so much. But yeah, some of the add-ons could use some tweakings. I don't know if there's really anything you can do numbers-wise other than just outright changing some of them. But yeah. Now, I will say that the grenades, on the topic of them being not bouncing enough and whatever, I do think they are a little too easy to dodge. Now, you could argue this is just skill issue and me just being bad with landing them, but even a lot of survivors I was playing against were like, yeah, it was very easy to tell exactly where they were going to come out without even looking at you, which was kind of a little bit frustrating. I don't know that needs to be fixed necessarily. Like I said, I think if you lean more into you being able to angle them off of basically anything, I think that would kind of eliminate that, because there were a lot of loops where I would get hits because the survivors really didn't see it coming, because I was like bouncing it off the side of the wall or the bottom of the loop. So there wasn't really much room for them to dodge. Now, you could argue that's bad too, but I think I did see some survivors actually dodging those still, and it was really impressive to watch that, so I really thought that was cool. Otherwise, though, like I said, if we lean more into the bouncing, I think that's fine. Overall, though, the killer, good or bad, because I'm probably ranking him about middle of the pack as far as strength goes, doesn't really matter to me. He's fun, and I think the fact that he's fun is the most important part. There are a lot of things you can do with this killer that are very, very fun and inventive, and I think that is the most important bit. On the topic of him being ranged, also, I would like to mention he's more like a Deathslinger than he is Huntress. That's the way I would make the comparison. You're not doing cross maps, but you can still go for cool hits. But yeah. So look, next we're going to talk about his perks, because I want to go over a couple of them that I don't think are going to become useful in the slightest. However, I don't think they're ever going to get changed. So we'll talk about those two first. First, we have Unbound. Unbound makes it so when you injure a survivor for 30 seconds, you gain a haste status effect when you vault for 10 seconds. So you get 5% of haste for 10 seconds after injuring a survivor within a 30-second window. This perk isn't bad. It is extremely situational. Some killers aren't even going to use it, and the 30-second timer, I feel, is way too restrictive. The way I would change this perk is make it very similar to Coup de Grace, where you get stacks after a generator is completed. 2 stacks, gen completed, and you can use them whenever you want. Max of 5 stacks or something like that. I think that would be perfectly fine in my opinion. I think it would allow for much more maneuverability with it, and I think we would actually see some killers running this. One killer in particular who comes to mind who might actually be running this a lot is going to be Xenomorph. But even then, I don't see a lot of Xenomorph players adding this to a lot of their builds. While that might be fun, it's not the most useful thing in the world. Next, we're going to go to Unforeseen, which is the perk I think is the best of all of his. Basically, it's better Trail of Torment. When you kick a gen, you transfer your terror radius to it, become undetectable, and this lasts for 30 seconds. This is really cool, and I know some people are saying that this is basically better Trail of Torment. Trail of Torment does have one thing over this, and that's that it's not time sensitive. Trail of Torment can technically last until the generator is done regressing. In theory, Trail of Torment can last for almost 2 minutes. Will it? Most of the time, no, but it can. And I think that's something people are forgetting with this. Also, you can use Trail of Torment in a psychological sense, which you can't really do in this one. Because Trail of Torment makes the generator go yellow, survivors may be more incentivized to go and fix that generator. I'm not saying that happens all the time, I'm saying it can happen, and it's a nice little way to trap them. There's not really any changes I would do with this perk. I think this perk is fine. I can see it being run on a lot of specific stealth builds and with other gen caking perks. Combining this with Nowhere to Hide is actually going to be insane sometimes, I feel. Nothing super impressive or OP, but decently fine. Next is Undone, which is the worst perk in this entire thing. And the reason being is a condition. So when the survivors fail a skill check, when repairing or healing, you get 3 tokens. You can have a max of 30. And when you kick a generator, it instantly loses a percentage of those tokens. So if you're at 30 tokens, it loses 30% progress. And it blocks the gen for a certain amount of seconds based on the number of tokens. If you have 30 tokens, it's 30 seconds. It causes it to start regressing once it's become unblocked. Now, it's a cool idea and concept. However, the whole failing skill check thing, only like Doctor and maybe Pig and Pinhead are going to use this builds, like in their builds at all, which is fine. I think it's just one of those things. I'm never a fan of perks that rely on the survivors messing up or the killer messing up to get use out of. That's just a me thing, and I do think it's bad design that way, because it's like, if you go into a match where no one fails a skill check, even if you run a full skill check build, right, then this perk doesn't do anything for you. Even with like Unbound, like while it is situational, there are still situations where it can work, and you can kind of force the value out of it. This, you can't really do that. But yeah, that was pretty much my thoughts on the killer. Once again, I think overall, good or bad, however they change him, I would lean more into the bouncing aspect and maybe make the radius bigger on the grenades. And either way though, if he comes out as he is, I think he's fine. He's fun. And that is the most important thing about all this. He is fun. He is interesting. And I think he's new enough. He shares some things with some other killers for sure. If we're going to be super reductive, he's basically Hag mixed with Nemesis mixed with Deathslinger. If we want to be 100% super reductive. But I think he brings enough to the table in that combination to make himself his own. Tell me what you guys think of the new killer. The Unknown is easily marking up. I think he's going to be one of my most played killers once the patch comes to live. I'm going to put him right behind Singularity for me. For those who don't know, my list right now is Chucky, Larry, Clown, Deathslinger, Clown, Xenomorph, and I think I think Unknown is probably going to take Xenomorph's spot for me, if I'm perfectly honest. But yeah, tell me what you guys think. As always, I love y'all. Don't forget about the Killer Interview podcast every Wednesday. The new episode is out now with for Skull Merchant with Pixel Bush. It's a really good episode in my opinion. I'll see you guys when I see y'all. Have a good one. Yeah, and bye.